Mike Chappell from Indianapolis. He's been covering the Colts since the Mayflower rolled in back in 1984. He's also a Hall of Fame
so
selector.
not the boat, the Mayflower.
Not the boat, yeah.
Okay.
Learn your history there, Jack.
All right.
He's been covering the Colts since 84. He's a Hall of Fame selector. He's a Hall of Fame presenter. He made the case for Edgerrin James last year, who'll be going in this year. And then he had the tough task, guys, of presenting for Peyton Manning this year. I assume, Chap, it was just 2 words when you made that presentation to the Hall of Fame selectors.
And, Mike, don't forget to unmute yourself there.
Hey, Chap, you got to unmute. It's coming along.
Otherwise, Chris is going to do a story on
Chap, you there?
Yeah, it's rare whenever you have a guy where 2 names is all you have to say. It's Brett Favre and Jerry Rice and Dan Marino and people like that. And Peyton's, if you have to explain why Peyton Manning belongs in Canton, you haven't been paying attention, and you shouldn't be in the discussion anyway.
So did you just say 2 words, or did you actually take time and make a presentation for him?
No, I said 2 words. I said Peyton Manning, and I said this was on a Zoom call, and I said if you can see me, I'm dropping the mic. And again, it's just one of those rare times you don't want to take the chance of not presenting a guy properly. But again, if you don't know Peyton and his background, I mean, what are you doing in the room to determine Hall of Fame people?
Chap, you were there when Peyton is drafted in '98. There was the whole Ryan Leaf, Peyton Manning thing, and Manning made sure they knew they had taken the right quarterback in that situation. We know about the numbers. We know about the 2 Super Bowl titles, 4 Super Bowl appearances. But how can you put him into perspective in the place of history? You know, Tom Brady, they shared, several seasons against one another. Brady has all those Super Bowls. He's going for a 7th. But what about Peyton? Do you take away a little bit from his legacy because he only had the 2 championships?
No, I think when you say only 2, well, how many quarterbacks, how many franchises would like only 2? I realize there's 1 in Indy and 1 in Denver. But when you look at Peyton and his influence, look at Indianapolis. Chris, you and I have been here. The city's different. It's just different. And had it not been for Peyton in the great, great surrounding cast, the Marvins and Edgerins and Tarek Glenn and Reggie and on and on, there wouldn't be a Lucas Oil Stadium. And you could argue to some extent that maybe the Colts would have left town. I mean, that's how strong his impact was. Look at the high school scene now. Look at how high schools have changed and improved and all across the state. And that's in large part Peyton Manning's influence, the Payback Classic. So I just think it's someone, David Letterman, he's got a statue outside the stadium for crying out loud, which, you and I were both there. You were the MC. Yeah. When they do that, you're just a different level. And, you can argue, and we all have argued, Brady or Manning or Manning or Brady. But locally, the Peyton Manning Children's Hospital, I mean, it's on and on and on. It's rare when one person has that type of influence, but how do you say he didn't have that type of influence?
Mike, how did you, first 2-part question, how did you become a presenter? And what goes into presenting for somebody like Reggie Wayne? How much time are you putting in, effort, and how do you make that presentation to the panel?
I've been doing it for about 20-some years. I took over for John Banch. Each city, each market has a representative, so 32 representatives in, and then there'll be 16 at large. And again, that market's person is assigned that player. I did Marvin, I did Edgerrin, Reggie, I did part of Tony Dungy. I hope to do, Robert Mathis and Freeney and Adam Vinatieri coming up. But you just try to give you get about 5 minutes, you get about, you try to find the bullet points of why this guy belongs with 300 and some people in Canton, Ohio. And if you're one of the final 15 in the room, you probably belong there. It's like 85% of the people that get in the room eventually get into the Hall of Fame. Sometimes you have to wait your turn. Peyton obviously didn't. Edgerrin did. Marvin did for 3 years, which I still don't agree with. But you just have to kind of say, this guy, because again, all these guys are great players. In this past year, we had Reggie and Torrey Holt and Calvin Johnson. What I've tried never to do is say, well, this guy deserves to be in over this guy because that, at some level, you're criticizing the other player. And that's what you don't want to do. You just sort of say, this is what this guy did. This is why he belongs. Did he check all the boxes? Championship, regular postseason, longevity. and you hope that the guy's career stands on its own when you look at everyone else. So you make your best effort, and sometimes it works. But again, you're always going against 14 other quality people. And what people have to understand, only 5 modern era players get in every year. It's always funny. Somebody says, well, this guy should have gotten in. And they'll say, well, who'd you want to take out? Well, I don't want to take anybody out. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. You get 5 guys. So it's difficult, but you just do the best you can and hope that the people in the room agree with what you argue.
So, Mike, is it a analytical pitch? Is it an emotional pitch? Does it get pretty contentious at times?
Depending on the player. We've had times in players that there's been a lot of discussion on. It's it's on-field contributions. Well, sometimes people want to get fuzzy on if a player was suspended for whatever reason, that's off-field, but it impacts the team on-field, and maybe it works against players. But emotion really shouldn't enter into it. And there have been players who were really not very easy to work with the media. Maybe they weren't great interviews, or they didn't interview. That really shouldn't enter into it. And the same way as if a player is really easy to work with, that shouldn't really weigh into it. It should just be the guy, what his career did, how did he stack up against everyone else? Did he carry himself the right way? I mean, that's part of it as well. But the overriding criteria is, what did you do for the game, in the game, for your teams, and did you carry yourself the right way? And most guys check most of those boxes.
Cap, I always make this analysis in baseball when we'll see guys, AAA baseball players in Indianapolis, and they never make it. They're not as good in the bigs. They're great in AAA, so I call them AAA and a half players. Are there some Hall of Fame guys like that are just perennially in that top 15? Maybe they're 11 or 12 every year. Do you find guys that get stuck in that process and can never seem to get over the hump for a few years?
Yeah, and we had some of those this year with John Lynch, has been it for 8 or 9 years. Tony Baselli, Alan Faneca. So you get that. And the problem we're running into is, well, if he didn't make it last year, then he's going to make it next year. Well, it can be a different group. This year, the 15, it included Peyton, Charles Woodson, Calvin Johnson, Reggie, and Torrey Holt, and Faneca and Baselli. And Peyton's going to get in. There's a very good chance Charles Woodson gets in as a first-time eligible player. Well, if Calvin Johnson theoretically gets in, that's 3 first-time players that get in. That leaves you 2 spots for guys, many of whom have been in the room for a long time. So every time you have so many first-year eligible players get in, and they deserve it. I mean, most times, there have been a few I've not agreed with. But when you do that, it limits the number of, of the guys that have been around. It hurts their chances, and it pushes them forward. Well, maybe next year's class, it's like I said, if Reggie doesn't make it, well, maybe next year. Well, you don't know who next year's class is going to be. So to tell a guy to wait your turn is sort of cruel, because you don't know every year, for the most part, who's going to be in that class and who might he be going up against. It might be a different class. It might be a better class. So I understand guys who get rankled by having to wait. Edrin was really upset that he had to wait so long. But you just once you get in, you're a Hall of Famer. They don't say, here's Edrin James, it took him 6 times to get in, or whatever. Once you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer. But to tell a guy year after year that maybe next year's your time, it can be cruel to that player and the people around him.
Well, Mike, I know you do an amazing job covering the Colts, and one of our topics today was Deshaun Watson and Fitz. Do you think the Colts are satisfied at quarterback? Are the Colts a team that might make a move to try and pull a Deshaun Watson into Indianapolis?
First, I can't imagine as many dumb moves that the Texans have made. I can't imagine them being, Dumb and Dumber level to sit him inside the division. I don't think – I think Deshaun Watson fits anywhere. He's that quality of a quarterback, and he's young and all that. I don't see the Colts making that kind of a move just because what it would take to get him. But, whatever you think, 2 1s, 2 2s, 3 1s, whatever, and players. But they need a quarterback. Right now, the only quarterback under a contract is Jacob Eason, and I just don't know that they saw nearly enough of a 4th-round draft pick in his rookie year to make any kind of legitimate assessment. So, they were linked to interest in Matthew Stafford. There was interest, not to the level that the Rams got. So, now we're going to move on to the next quarterback, Carson Wentz or whomever, Sam Darnold. I think it's safe to say that the quarterbacks, the Colts starting next September, probably isn't on the roster because I just don't see it being Jacob Eason.
He's Mike Chappell. He's been covering the Colts since they became the Indianapolis Colts. He's a Hall of Fame selector, Hall of Fame presenter, and he's a Hall of Famer in my book. Chap, thanks for the time, and we will see you one of these days when I get back to Indianapolis.
Be good, people. Thanks.
Can't get better than Chap, man. He knows his stuff. And can you imagine getting in that room and you're making the cases? Because like he said, you got a player that feels like he's a Hall of Famer. His family, his people are all one. And it's upon him to go in there and tell those other guys why he belongs.
Yeah, that's incredible pressure to have upon your shoulders. And I'm sure I've got to believe it gets pretty impassioned in there, and I've got to believe it gets pretty contentious at times because everybody believes what they believe, and you're pushing for them, and you want them in there because you probably want to make that phone call, hey, we got you in.